This is TWiT.
Look, we've always had conspiracy theories from the very first days of our country, but without Facebook, QAnon wouldn't have the spread and the currency and the power it has, right?
So I think that just like we can sometimes, every issue is easier to explore with the simplest case, and then we can work to the complicated case. So let's just start with the flat Earth.
Okay.
Because the flat Earth is not a conspiracy anyone should believe in 2020, and yet it's on the rise, right? There's never been a moment at which flat Eartherism was a harder sell.
As you point out in the article, you could put a GoPro on a balloon and go high enough to see the curvature of the Earth. It's
middle school classes around America did that last year before the lockdown.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
So, and yet it's on the rise. And when you look at what the underlying theory of the flat Earth is, it's not merely that the Earth is flat. That's actually the secondary part of the flat Earth theory. The primary part of the theory is that you can't trust authorities because they are captured and they're in it for themselves, and they're lying to us, and they lie whenever it's convenient for them and pocket the money.
Well,
now,
that's the central tenet of anti-vaxxers. That's the central tenet of all of these, right?
Absolutely.
You cannot trust
authority.
authority.
That everyone on this program has already said themselves. So we probably we don't disagree on this. You know, most people, I think, agree on this point. But the problem is that in a very high-tech world, you cannot answer all the technical questions for yourself, right? Even if you go and figure out whether or not you can trust the regulation that determined the structural integrity of your ceiling, can you then go and get a microbiology degree and decide whether or not you trust vaccine science? And when you're done with that, can you figure out whether the 737 MAX is safe to fly, right? We have to delegate our trust to neutral adjudicators, regulators. And the regulators have become less and less trustworthy over time, and it's made us prone to believing theories that start from the premise that
you can't trust
truth, that you can't trust the process by which the truth is known.
Right.
And so what you have to do is find someone who sounds like they know what they're talking about and get them to sort the true from the false. And so if you look at flat earthers, they're all over this.
Yeah, so one way to look at this, because I know some people, I think we all do, who are conspiracy oriented and so on. You know that feeling you have when you were informed that the consensus was XYZ, and then you believed that because it was the consensus, because the experts said it was true, and so on, that it's probably true. That feeling, that's a personality trait that most people have. And likewise, the opposite exists as a personality trait. If the conventional wisdom is X cannot possibly be true. Like that's where a lot of people start. And that's what drives the conspiracy theories, the flat earthers, the reading of the National Enquirer, and so on.
Mike,
and
I think that's probably true, but it doesn't explain why there's more of them, right? Unless we underwent a genetic shift.
I don't think there is more of them.
Something's in the water.
I think they're more vocal now. There used to be a source of shame to say that you believe certain things, and because the sources of information, the 9 o'clock news or whatever it was, didn't toe that line. But nowadays you can find like-minded people on Facebook groups, and you can just really indulge these things and also learn about more. And Facebook adds to this actively. I mean, a recent report, and I'm sorry I don't have the details in front of me, but a recent report showed that the majority of people who went down rabbit holes or went to conspiracy groups did so because Facebook actually recommended them.
Sure. Well, and I think but it doesn't tell you why they believed it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's just the same thing of how everything works right now. The social networks of the world and just the media of the world. When Kyrie Irving, a basketball player, says the world is flat, and he's got a huge audience, not just social media, just in TV, in networking. He sells shoes. So kids listen to him and they're like, oh, my hero said the earth is flat. And he had to go and apologize because he had 2,000 teachers like, bro, I got 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds coming and telling me that you said the world's flat, and I'm trying to teach them in school. Could you shut up? And he had to backtrack it. So
did he believe the world was flat, or he just said it?
The way he said it, he believed it. He only backtracked because he got destroyed on social on he got destroyed in the world. The media ripped him, everybody ripped him, but teachers were coming at him in droves on all his social platforms. So he walked that back, had to do an interview and explain himself, and just saying, I meant just to say to open your mind to possibilities. Okay, so
the possibility of the world being flat.
A college-educated guy
Jeez.
who has millions of dollars, who has millions of eyeballs upon
why do more people believe? Why are we so vulnerable to this today?
Because it's
finish, Doctor, and then Cory, you're next.
I saw the greatest meme ever, because it's a conversation I have all the time. I was talking last week about a guy who told me that it's okay that Amazon doesn't pay their fair taxes, that Apple doesn't pay their fair taxes. And I said, so you make $27,000 a year. I know you're broke. And you're here defending what these billionaires make and what they don't pay out. Tell me the good that they're doing with the tax money that they're saving. You've got to pay your taxes with your little measly check, but you're going to go and defend them. Like, you went to school, learned nothing, average education, but you're now defending rich people because marketing, branding, and putting to your mind the things that you hear. You'll go out there and go defend anybody because you love your iPhone, because you love 2-day Prime and you think that they innovated the world on shipping. I'm like, bro, they had 2-day shipping since the 70s.
You're
Amazon
on the team.
Didn't invent it.
That's because that's a team sport now. It's a lot easier to say, well, I'm on Team Apple or I'm on Team Amazon. So whatever they do, and we see a lot of that in politics. I'm on Team Republican or I'm on Team Democrat. Whatever they do, that's right. But why?
I think it's definitely true that we take some identity from these beliefs, but it doesn't explain what we used to have that filled that void. Like why it is we feel so alienated, why it is we're so in dire need of these alternative explanations. Anna Merlin wrote a really good book last year called Republic of Lies, that's ethnographies of conspiracists and kind of social theory of conspiracism. And one of the things that she talks about is that being a conspiracist is hard work. Right, we tend to think of it as being very lazy, like, how could you believe the Earth is flat? Everyone knows it's round. Well, to maintain a belief in the flat Earth, you have to do a lot of reading about bogus science, right? Anti-vaxxers are not people who are lazy. They're people who are lavishly wrong, like wrong in this very detailed, energetic way that requires a heroic effort to keep up. And one of the things that Merlin says is that it's not enough for you to distrust authority for you to become a conspiracist, that the cocktail that makes conspiracism is both a distrust of authority and trauma resulting from bad authority actions, right?
Yes.
From the authorities doing something bad. So, we know a lot, like, people know a lot about aerospace conspiracies in the UFO world, and aerospace is full of actual conspiracies, not imaginary ones, but ones where there was that time they accidentally dropped a nuclear bomb on the Midwest and didn't tell anyone about it until they got busted for it because it fell out of a USAF airplane, right? Like, people who've been directly traumatized by the opioid epidemic find it very easy and compelling to believe anti-vax, because the anti-vax story is pharma companies don't care if they kill you. The regulators aren't keeping them honest. The science behind it is junk. And you can't trust anything that anyone tells you about health. Like, that part's not wrong. And, I think that all of us who are down on conspiracism, and I include myself, need to ask yourself what you are going to do when you rub up against something like this, right? Like when, say, the CDC, who I think most of us trust most of the time, suddenly turns around and says, well, we've decided to go with the Department of Health and Human Services recommendation, and nobody should get tested merely because they came into contact with someone with COVID. By the way, that also supports the president's agenda, but that's totally not why we're doing it, right? Like, what do we become conspiracists then? Like, how do we then sort the next claim the CDC makes from this existing one?
Just to be clear, did a bomb fall in the Midwest?
Yeah, there was a nuke that there was a broken arrow in the Midwest. I forget what it's called.
It didn't explode though, right?
No, but they dropped a nuke.
Okay.
Yeah, they lost a bomb over the Midwest.
We lost one of our bombs is missing. That's okay. That's not so bad.
Yeah,
government shipped in the cocaine epidemic and brought it into the hood in America and just gave it to black people.
Just call it crack. If we call it crack, You know,
I mean, if you look at so Merlin has a whole chapter on Katrina levee conspiracies, right? The belief that the levees were dynamited in Katrina, which is a widely held belief among some people.
Interesting.
I don't think it's true, but I think it could be true. And the reason I think it could be true is because in 1928 they did dynamite the levees in Tupelo to drown black neighborhoods and spare white neighborhoods.
Jesus.
Right? So like it's a
they
thing
can
that
go in
actually
and buy up all the property and sell it, which is what they did. They went down there, they bought up all the people's property for like $2. That's the only place they had to live. And they displaced people all over the country. They sat there, they dropped a bomb in Philadelphia on some guys in 1985. Nobody went to jail for it except the only survivor in the bombing. The Tuskegee Airmen, they would never do that to American people, the people that fought for this country and their nation. The government loves you. So again, I'm not anti-conspiracy because sometimes, especially in my genre, besides flat earth stuff, the conspiracy, I got like a list of like 12. Oh, that's not real, and they don't do that. If I hear one more person tell me I never thought that a police officer would do that, and I've been telling you this since I was 10 years old, but now we got camera phones, so you see it, and now you have to believe it because you're looking right at it. So, I mean, some conspiracy theories, they're not all from Russia. Some of them are just good old-fashioned American history.
I think trauma is a good word because it's not merely the trauma of being lied to by authority or being misled by authority. It's there's a lot of trauma in general these days, and that combine that. That's the goal of propaganda, is not to make you believe something, but make you not believe anything. And
I think that's right.
Yeah,
that's well said.
Well, that's certainly the aim of Russian desinformation, I think it's called, which was developed by the Soviet Union and the KGB during the Cold War, which is now in full force, and it's deliberately to make you distrust all sources of information. I also think that their conspiracy thinking comes from the fact that our lived experience gives us a worldview, and there are many things that are below that worldview where we don't believe that something could be that evil or something could be that great. So one example would be lots of people don't believe in the moon landing because that's a level of greatness, that's an achievement that is so great that it's so far beyond what people could imagine as possible that they just say can't be. I'm going to believe that it was done in a Hollywood studio or whatever. And then black people have been telling everyone else for decades about how the police treat them with a lot of violence, of trampling their rights and so on. And I think a lot of people, there's a lot of racism behind that, but there's also a lot of people who just couldn't believe, because of their lived experience, that level of evil, that sort of darkness existed all around them. And so, I actually think this is one case in which ubiquitous video technology, personal technology, is actually shattering something that people couldn't bring themselves to believe in the past. And unfortunately, that's not going to work for the space program. But again, I think people have a lived experience that doesn't allow them to believe things that are that far outside of their lived experience. Mm.
Well, and if you've ever worked with someone who got called out as a sexual abuser, and you may have found that they were very good to you, right? That like oftentimes as a man, when other men get outed as being sexual abusers by women I trust and who I believe, the thing is that they have never displayed abusive behavior in my presence because they knew that if they did, there would be some social consequence because of our relative social power. And so they confined their bad acts to only doing it in the presence of people who wouldn't be believed. And I think that there's a strong analogy to the conduct of police around high status and low status people, that they are respectful and generally good to higher status people. And there's, it is the combination of systemic disbelieving and erasure of other people's experience. And as you say, your lived experience of never seeing it in person.
Harvey Weinstein was a perfect gentleman to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.